Some say the true frontier wasn't the untamed West, but the walls we build around our own hearts. In the bitter winter of 1879, Colorado, a woman with a face the world had taught to hide, arrived at the doorstep of the only ranch for miles. What happened next would shock a territory where appearances determined worth and challenge what it means to truly see another soul. Why would a man like him take in someone like her? What's he hiding out there on that ranch? Some beauty can't be seen with eyes alone. Stay until the final moment of this story, because what happens when these two broken souls confront their deepest fears will forever change how you understand the meaning of true beauty and what it costs to recognize it in a world blinded by surface judgments. Before we ride deeper into this powerful story, I need you to do something right now. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Why? Because here at The Black Rancher, we're uncovering the hidden stories of black heroes who helped shape the American frontier, stories deliberately buried by those who wrote our history books. If you believe everyone deserves to see themselves in America's great narrative, share this video now. These forgotten tales of courage, dignity, and love deserve to be told. Subscribe now, and let's preserve this legacy together. Now let's journey back to 1879, to the snow-covered mountains of Colorado, where our story begins. Timber Creek, Colorado Territory, December 1879. Isaiah Washington pulled his coat tighter as the wind howled through the valley, rattling the windows of his cabin. The snow had been falling steadily for 3 days, and even for a man who had survived the harsh Colorado winters for 7 years now, this storm was proving particularly brutal. A former slave from Georgia, who had fought with the Union and then headed west with nothing but determination and dreams, Isaiah had built the Crescent Moon Ranch from nothing. At 42, his hands were calloused from work, his face weathered from sun and wind, but his eyes still held the quiet strength that had carried him through unimaginable hardship. "Easy now, old friend," Isaiah murmured to his dog, Wolf, a gray-muzzled shepherd mix who had suddenly perked up his ears. "You hear something I don't?" Wolf growled low, staring at the door. Then Isaiah heard it too, a faint knock so tentative he might have mistaken it for the wind if not for Wolf's reaction. He reached for his rifle, keeping it at his side as he approached the door. Visitors in this weather were rare, and visitors with good intentions even rarer. "Who's there?" he called, voice firm but not hostile. When no answer came, he thought perhaps he'd imagined it after all. But Wolf remained alert, and then the knock came again, barely audible above the howling wind. Isaiah unbolted the door and pulled it open. The bitter cold rushed in along with swirling snow, momentarily blinding him. When his vision cleared, he saw a figure huddled on his porch. Slight, wrapped in a threadbare shawl crusted with ice, head bowed so low that her face remained hidden beneath a scarf and bonnet. "Ma'am," Isaiah said, lowering his rifle immediately, "you'll freeze to death out here." "Come inside." The woman hesitated, still not looking up. "Please, ma'am, whatever brought you here can wait until you're warm." She raised her head slightly, just enough for her voice to carry. "I know I'm not pretty," she whispered, the words barely audible. "But they said you might hire help anyway." Isaiah's brow furrowed, taken aback not by her words, but by the raw pain behind them. "Beauty ain't skin, ma'am," he said simply, stepping aside. "And no one should be judging either in this storm. Come in before you freeze." She hesitated a moment longer, then stepped across his threshold, bringing with her the scent of cold and desperation. As Isaiah closed the door against the howling wind, he had no way of knowing that this moment would change everything. Not just for this mysterious woman, but for himself and the entire town of Timber Creek. The woman stood just inside the door, snow melting from her clothes onto the wooden floor, still keeping her face hidden beneath her scarf and bonnet. Wolf approached cautiously, sniffed at her, then returned to his place by the fire without alarm. "Name's Isaiah Washington," he said, hanging his rifle back on its pegs. "This here's the Crescent Moon Ranch." "Eleanor," she replied softly. "Eleanor Reed." "Well, Miss Reed, let's get you warmed up. You can take that wet coat off and sit by the fire." She hesitated again, clutching her shawl tighter. I should explain first." Explanations work better when your teeth aren't chattering, Isaiah said, his voice gentle but leaving no room for argument. He gestured to a chair near the stone fireplace where flames crackled, casting dancing shadows across the cabin's simple but well-kept interior. Reluctantly, Eleanor moved toward the fire but kept her face turned away as she slowly unwound her scarf with trembling fingers. Isaiah busied himself preparing coffee, giving her privacy while keeping her in his peripheral vision. He'd learned long ago that some wounds needed space to be revealed. "The stagecoach left me in town yesterday," she finally said, her voice stronger now, though still quiet. "I asked about work, and someone mentioned you might need help with keeping house, cooking. That you lived alone and might not ask too many questions." Isaiah nodded, pouring the coffee into 2 tin cups. "I do live alone, and I could use help around here. Winter's hard on a ranch, even a small one like this." He brought her the steaming cup, and as he extended it toward her, she finally turned to face him fully. The left side of Eleanor's face was marked by a web of scars. Burn scars, Isaiah recognized immediately, extending from her temple down to her jaw. Her left eye drooped slightly, and that ear was partially missing. The right side of her face was untouched, almost striking in its contrast, a single brown eye regarding him warily, waiting for the reaction she'd clearly seen countless times before. Isaiah's expression didn't change as he handed her the cup. "Coffee's hot. Careful not to burn yourself." Something flickered in her eye, surprise, relief, uncertainty. She accepted the cup, her fingers brushing his briefly. "Most people stare," she said, "or look away too quick." "I've seen worse," Isaiah replied evenly, settling into the chair opposite her. "Had worse myself." He rolled up his sleeve to reveal a pattern of raised scars on his forearm, the unmistakable mark of a whip. Eleanor's gaze lingered on the scars, understanding dawning in her expression. "You were a slave," she said quietly. "Was," Isaiah confirmed, rolling his sleeve back down. "Now I'm just a rancher." A moment of silence stretched between them, filled only by the crackling of the fire and the howling of the wind outside. There was a new quality to the silence, not the awkward tension of strangers, but the quiet recognition of 2 people who understood something fundamental about each other. "How'd you end up in Timber Creek?" Isaiah asked, sipping his coffee. Eleanor's fingers tightened around her cup. "I was a schoolteacher back east, in Pennsylvania. There was a fire at the school 3 years ago. I got most of the children out, but..." Her hand moved unconsciously toward her scarred cheek. "Afterward, the town was kind but uncomfortable. Parents started pulling their children from my classroom, said I frightened the little ones." The bitterness in her voice was palpable, but beneath it lay something deeper, a wound that hadn't healed. "So you came west," Isaiah said. It wasn't a question. She nodded. "I thought perhaps here, where everyone is starting fresh, appearances might matter less." A hollow laugh escaped her. "I was wrong about that." Isaiah studied her for a long moment. "The town give you trouble already?" "Not trouble, exactly. Just the usual. The stares, the whispers, the mothers pulling children closer when I walk by. The innkeeper charged me double what he told the man before me." She looked down at her hands. "I have enough money for 2 more nights. After that..." Isaiah nodded, understanding. "And someone sent you to me?" "The blacksmith, Mr. Daniels, said you were a fair man who judged people by their work, not other things." A small smile touched Isaiah's lips. "Samuel's a good man. One of the few in town who'd trade with a black rancher when I first came." He set his coffee down and leaned forward. "I do need help, Miss Reed. Cooking, cleaning, mending. The pay's not much, but there's a small room off the kitchen. It's yours if you want it." "Trial basis? Say 2 weeks? After that we can decide if it's working for both of us, sir." Eleanor's eye widened with surprise. "Just like that? Without checking my references or..." "You got through a blizzard to ask for work instead of charity," Isaiah said simply. "That tells me enough about your character." He paused. "Unless you've got some dark past I should know about. Bank robber, horse thief, Confederate spy." His eyes crinkled slightly at the corners. For the first time, a small smile appeared on Eleanor's face, transforming her features. "No, Mr. Washington, just a schoolteacher looking for a fresh start." "Then we have a deal." He stood up. "Storm's not letting up tonight. You can start tomorrow. I'll show you where you'll be staying." As Eleanor followed Isaiah toward the small room that would become hers, she felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time, the weight of judgment lifting ever so slightly from her shoulders. What neither of them could know was that their arrangement would soon become the center of a storm, far more dangerous than the one raging outside. A storm of prejudice, rumors, and threats that would test them both to their limits. By early February, a rhythm had developed at the Crescent Moon Ranch. Eleanor proved to be not just capable, but exceptional at managing the household. Her meals were better than anything Isaiah had prepared for himself in years. The cabin was cleaner and more organized than it had ever been, and she'd even taken to helping with the smaller livestock when the weather permitted. More surprising to Isaiah was how their evenings had evolved. After discovering his small collection of books, Eleanor had begun reading aloud by the fire. Her voice, which had been so hesitant at first, grew confident and expressive as she brought the words on the page to life. Sometimes they discussed the stories afterward, and Isaiah found himself enjoying these conversations more than he cared to admit. It had been years since he'd had regular company, and longer still since that company had included someone who could challenge his thinking the way Eleanor did. Her education far surpassed his own, yet she never made him feel less for it, instead sharing her knowledge with a genuine enthusiasm that made learning a pleasure rather than a reminder of opportunities denied. "You miss teaching," Isaiah observed one evening as Eleanor closed a volume of Emerson's essays. She looked up, surprised. "How did you know?" "Your voice changes when you explain things, gets a light to it." Eleanor's fingers traced the book's spine thoughtfully. "I do miss it. The children mostly, their curiosity. The moment when understanding dawns in their eyes." She smiled, a rare, full smile that Isaiah had seen more frequently as the weeks passed. "But this is good, too. Different, but good." Isaiah nodded, feeling strangely pleased. "Well, I'm learning more now than I ever did in the 1 year of schooling I got before the master decided I was more useful in the fields." Eleanor regarded him with quiet respect. "You've taught yourself remarkably well." "Had to," Isaiah replied simply. "Freedom doesn't mean much if you can't read the contracts people try to trick you with." The comfortable moment was interrupted by Wolf's sudden alertness, his ears perking up as he moved to the door with a low growl. "Expecting someone?" Eleanor asked, tension immediately returning to her posture. Isaiah shook his head, already reaching for his rifle. "Stay here," he instructed, moving cautiously to the window. Through the frosted glass, he could make out lantern light approaching the cabin, multiple lanterns carried by at least 5 or 6 men on horseback. "Mr. Washington," a voice called out, "need a word with you." Isaiah recognized the voice of Sheriff Thomas Harding, a man who had made his dislike of Isaiah's presence in the county clear from the beginning, but who generally maintained a veneer of grudging civility. "What business brings you out on a cold night, Sheriff?" Isaiah called through the door, rifle ready but not visible. "Communal concerns, Washington. Open up. We ain't here for trouble, just talk." Isaiah glanced back at Eleanor, who had gone pale, her scarred face tense with fear. "It's all right," he assured her, though he wasn't entirely convinced himself. "Stay back from the windows." He unbolted the door and opened it partway, keeping his body positioned to block both the view into the cabin and any potential shot. Sheriff Harding stood on the porch, flanked by Mayor Wilkins and 4 other men from town, including Reverend Foster and Mr. Spencer, the banker. All looked grim, their breath fogging in the cold night air. "Evening, gentlemen," Isaiah said evenly. "Unusual time for a social call." "This ain't social," Harding replied. "We're here about the woman." Isaiah's expression hardened. "Miss Reed is my employee. What concern is she of yours?" Mayor Wilkins stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Mr. Washington, there are standards in Timber Creek, appearances to maintain if we're to attract the right sort of settlers and investment." "And your point would be?" "The point," Spencer the banker cut in sharply, "is that you've got an unmarried woman living in your home, and you're an unmarried man. It ain't proper." She has her own room, Isaiah replied. And she's my housekeeper, nothing more. There's nothing improper about our arrangement. Reverend Foster spoke up, his voice carrying the practiced tone of moral authority. The appearance of impropriety is often as damaging as impropriety itself, Mr. Washington, especially given your particular circumstances. The implication hung in the air, ugly and unmistakable. My particular circumstances, Isaiah repeated slowly. You mean the color of my skin? Now don't go twisting things, Sheriff Harding warned. This is about respectability. Towns talking, saying all manner of things about what might be going on up here. And what exactly are they saying, Sheriff? Isaiah's voice was dangerously quiet now. Mayor Wilkins intervened, clearly trying to diffuse the tension. Look, Washington, we understand you might need household help, but surely there are more suitable arrangements. The woman could stay in town and ride out during the day, or you could hire one of the Peterson boys to help instead. Miss Reed stays, Isaiah stated firmly. She's an excellent housekeeper, she's harming no one, and what happens on my property is my business alone. Not when it affects the moral fabric of our community, Reverend Foster insisted. A white woman living with a colored man. A scarred white woman, Isaiah interrupted, anger finally bleeding into his tone. Let's speak plainly, Reverend. If Miss Reed looked different, would you be standing on my porch right now? The uncomfortable shuffling of the men answered his question. You have two choices, Sheriff Harding said, hand resting meaningfully on his holster. Either the arrangement changes by the end of the week, or there might be consequences neither of you will like. Is that a threat, Sheriff? It's fair warning, Harding replied. Some folks in town are mighty upset. Can't say what they might do if this continues. He tipped his hat with mock politeness. Evening, Washington. Think on what we said. As the men turned to leave, Isaiah caught the mayor's arm. Wilkins, a word. The mayor hesitated, then nodded to the others to go ahead. When they were alone on the porch, Isaiah spoke quietly. You and I have had our differences, but you've always prided yourself on being a fair man. Is this really about propriety, or is it something else? Mayor Wilkins sighed, looking suddenly tired. It's complicated, Washington. The railroad's considering a spur line through Timber Creek. Would change everything for us, but their representatives are coming next month to assess if we're the right kind of community for investment. And a black rancher with a scarred white woman doesn't fit your picture of the right kind of community, Isaiah finished for him. The mayor had the decency to look uncomfortable. These are just the realities we're facing, nothing personal. It's always personal to those being told they don't belong, Isaiah replied. Good night, Mayor. He closed the door firmly and turned to find Eleanor standing in the middle of the room, face ashen. I should go, she said immediately. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid. More trouble. More disruption. Isaiah shook his head. You heard them. This isn't about you or me individually. It's about us together challenging what they think is proper. Which is precisely why I should leave, Eleanor insisted. You've built something here, Mr. Washington. I won't be the reason you lose it. Isaiah, he corrected automatically. After weeks of trying, he'd still not convinced her to use his first name. And I've faced worse than small-town gossip. This is more than gossip. Eleanor's voice trembled slightly. You know what men like that are capable of when they feel threatened. Isaiah did know. The scars on his back were testament to what men could do when they believed their social order was being challenged. I won't force you to stay, he said quietly. But I won't force you to leave either. This is your decision, Eleanor. But know this. I'm not afraid of them, and whatever you decide, you have a place here for as long as you want it. Their eyes met across the room, his steady and determined, hers conflicted and afraid. In that moment, something shifted between them, some unspoken understanding that transcended employer and employee, that acknowledged the peculiar bond that had formed between two people the world had taught to expect rejection. I need to think, Eleanor finally said. Isaiah nodded. Take all the time you need. As Eleanor retreated to her room, Isaiah stood by the window, watching the retreating lanterns of the town committee disappear into the darkness. The confrontation had made one thing abundantly clear. The fragile peace he'd built for himself in Timber Creek was over. What remained to be seen was whether what would replace it would be worth the inevitable fight to come. If you're still with me, you're about to witness the most powerful moments of this story. Before we continue, I want to remind you that The Black Rancher is dedicated to uncovering these hidden stories of courage, dignity, and resistance on the American frontier. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell right now. These are the stories history tried to erase, of black cowboys and ranchers who helped build the West against overwhelming odds. By subscribing and sharing, you're helping preserve this vital part of our shared history. Now let's return to Timber Creek, where Isaiah and Eleanor are about to face their greatest challenges yet. The next morning, Isaiah found Eleanor already in the kitchen before dawn, her bag packed and sitting by the door. His heart sank at the sight, but he kept his expression neutral as he accepted the cup of coffee she handed him. "You've decided then," he said simply. Eleanor nodded, not quite meeting his eyes. "It's for the best. I can't be responsible for bringing trouble to your door." "Trouble's been at my door since I claimed this land," Isaiah replied. "Being black in a white man's territory ensures that." "This is different," Eleanor insisted. "You've earned a measure of respect in this community despite everything. I won't be the reason that changes." Isaiah studied her over the rim of his cup. "Is that really why you're leaving? Or is it because you believe what they're implying, that there's something wrong about you being here?" Her head snapped up, eye flashing with sudden anger. "Of course not. What they think is important to you," Isaiah finished quietly. "Otherwise their words wouldn't have power." Eleanor fell silent, the truth of his observation landing heavily between them. "I spent 30 years having other people decide my worth," Isaiah continued. "Where I could go, who I could speak to, whether I could learn to read. When I came west, I promised myself no one would ever again dictate how I should live." He set down his cup. "But that's your choice to make, not mine." "It's not that simple," Eleanor whispered. "It never is," Isaiah agreed. "But sometimes the hardest choice is also the most important one." He rose from the table. "I need to check the north pasture fence. Storm might have damaged it. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. But know this, you leaving won't change their minds about me, and it won't change how they see you either. It'll just prove they still have the power to make us both hide." With that, he took his coat and left, giving her the space to make her decision without the weight of his presence. The morning air was bitter cold, the sky clear and vast above him as Isaiah rode the perimeter of his property, Wolf loping alongside. His mind kept returning to Eleanor's packed bag, and he found himself wrestling with feelings he hadn't expected. In the short time she'd been at Crescent Moon, something had changed in the ranch, in him. The solitude he'd once cherished now seemed empty rather than peaceful. It was nearly noon when Isaiah spotted the smoke rising from the direction of town. He urged his horse to higher ground, squinting against the sun. Black smoke billowed upward, too much for a simple chimney fire. Something was burning in Timber Creek. Isaiah hesitated only briefly before turning his horse toward town. Whatever was happening, extra hands would be needed. Fire was everyone's enemy in these wooden towns of the West. As he approached Timber Creek, the commotion became clearer. A crowd had gathered around the schoolhouse, which was now fully engulfed in flames. Men formed a bucket brigade from the nearby creek, but it was clear their efforts were too little, too late. Isaiah dismounted and pushed his way through the crowd, grabbing an empty bucket from a man who looked ready to collapse from exhaustion. "Where's the teacher? The children?" he asked urgently. "No school today," the man gasped. Building was empty. Thank God. Isaiah joined the line, passing buckets for nearly an hour before the fire was finally brought under control. By then, the schoolhouse was nothing but a charred skeleton, smoke still rising from the smoldering ruins. Sheriff Harding approached as Isaiah was helping to put away the last of the buckets. "Didn't expect to see you here, Washington," he said, his tone neutral for once. "Fire doesn't care about color or disputes," Isaiah replied evenly. "What happened?" Harding shook his head. "Stove was left burning overnight, seems like." Mrs. Calloway's been careless before. Town council's been meaning to replace her, but... He shrugged. Good teachers are hard to come by out here. Something clicked in Isaiah's mind. He looked around at the gathered townspeople, the worried faces, the children watching their schoolhouse in ruins, the mayor deep in conversation with the railroad representative who must have arrived early. Without another word to the sheriff, Isaiah mounted his horse and rode hard back to the ranch. He found Eleanor sitting on the porch steps, her bag no longer by the door. She looked up as he approached, her expression unreadable. There was a fire in town, Isaiah said without preamble. The schoolhouse burned down. Eleanor's eye widened. Was anyone hurt? No. Building was empty. He dismounted, coming to stand before her. They need a teacher, Eleanor. A real one, not just someone who can read and write. Understanding dawned slowly on her face. No, she said, shaking her head. They'd never accept me. They might not have a choice, Isaiah replied. Railroad's coming. Town needs to show progress, education. And good teachers, as the sheriff himself just told me, are hard to come by out here. Eleanor stood, agitation evident in every line of her body. You don't understand. I can't face a classroom again. The children staring, afraid. Children are more adaptable than adults, Isaiah said gently, and more honest. Give them a chance to know you, the real you, the teacher who risked her life to save her students, and they'll see past the scars. And the parents, the town council? After last night, you think they'll just welcome me with open arms? Isaiah's expression hardened with determination. No, but they need you more than they want to admit, and sometimes need trumps prejudice. He paused. This is your chance to be a teacher again, to show this town, to show yourself that you're more than what they see. Eleanor turned away, her hand unconsciously touching her scarred cheek. I'm afraid, she admitted quietly. I know, Isaiah said, moving closer. Being seen for who you truly are is terrifying, but hiding is no way to live. I learned that lesson the hard way. She turned back to him, tears glistening in her eye. And if they reject me? If the children are frightened? Then you come back here, Isaiah said simply. This is your home for as long as you want it. The word home hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning neither was quite ready to articulate. Why are you doing this? Eleanor asked. Why fight for me this way? Isaiah considered his answer carefully. Because 20 years ago, a woman saw past the color of my skin and taught me to read when it was illegal to do so. She saw something in me worth nurturing when the world said I was nothing but property. His voice softened. Everyone deserves someone who sees their true worth, Eleanor. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken words and possibilities neither had allowed themselves to consider. Finally, Eleanor straightened her shoulders. I'll need to prepare a proper lesson plan and speech to explain. She gestured to her face. Isaiah's smile was slow and warm. That's my girl. The following day, they rode into town together, Eleanor sitting tall despite her obvious nervousness. They went straight to Mayor Wilkins' office, where the town council had convened to discuss temporary schooling arrangements. The room fell silent as they entered, shock evident on every face. Mayor Wilkins recovered first. Mr. Washington, this is hardly the time for... Miss Reed is a certified teacher from Pennsylvania with 8 years of experience, Isaiah interrupted. She's here to offer her services to Timber Creek. Reverend Foster scoffed. This is preposterous. After our discussion just yesterday, your schoolhouse is in ashes, Eleanor spoke up, her voice stronger than Isaiah had ever heard it. Your children need education, especially if you hope to impress the railroad investors. She stepped forward, removing the partial veil she'd taken to wearing in town. Yes, I have scars. I got them saving children from a burning school. I understand if that makes some of you uncomfortable. But I promise you this, I'm an excellent teacher, and I will serve this community with everything I have. The council members exchanged uncertain glances. Spencer, the banker, spoke first. The parents won't stand for it. They won't want their children taught by someone like you. Then let them decide, Isaiah challenged. Hold a town meeting. Let Miss Reed speak for herself. If the parents still object afterward, we'll respect their decision." Mayor Wilkins stroked his beard thoughtfully. "The temporary schoolroom won't be ready for at least a week. I suppose we could hold a meeting in the church this Sunday after services." "That would be acceptable," Eleanor said formally. As they left the mayor's office, Isaiah noticed Eleanor trembling slightly. "You all right?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "I haven't spoken up like that in years." A small smile curved her lips. It felt good. Isaiah resisted the urge to take her hand. "You were magnificent." For the next 4 days, Eleanor prepared obsessively for the town meeting. Isaiah watched as she transformed before his eyes, standing straighter, speaking more confidently, the passionate teacher emerging from behind the shield of insecurity she'd worn for so long. When Sunday arrived, they rode to town in silence, both aware of the significance of what lay ahead. The church was packed when they arrived, curious whispers following them as they made their way to the front. Mayor Wilkins called for order, explaining the purpose of the gathering. "Miss Reed has offered to serve as our schoolteacher while we rebuild. Before we make any decisions, we've agreed to give her an opportunity to address you all." Eleanor stood, removing her bonnet and veil completely. A few gasps sounded from the crowd, a child's voice asking loudly, "Mama, what happened to her face?" Isaiah watched as Eleanor took a deep breath, then smiled, a full, genuine smile that transformed her face. "That's an excellent question, young man," she said, looking directly at the child who had spoken, "and it's the perfect place to begin. You see, questions are the heart of learning." For the next 20 minutes, Eleanor spoke with passion and clarity about her teaching philosophy, her experience, and yes, her scars. She explained how she'd received them rescuing children from a fire, turning what could have been a moment of discomfort into a lesson about courage and sacrifice. She spoke about the book she hoped to teach, the subjects she believed essential, and her dream of eventually expanding the school to include more advanced studies for older students. "Education," she concluded, "is not about appearances, mine or yours. It's about lighting a fire in young minds that can never be extinguished. That's what I offer Timber Creek. Not perfection, but passion. Not beauty as the world defines it, but the far more important beauty of knowledge and growth." When she finished, the church was silent. Then from the back a woman stood, Mrs. Peterson, mother of 5 and a respected voice in the community. "My Jacob still has nightmares about the fire," she said soberly. "Perhaps having a teacher who survived such an ordeal, who bears the marks of her courage, might help him understand that scars don't make you less. They prove you survived." She straightened her shoulders. "My children will attend Miss Reed's school." One by one, other parents stood, offering their support. Not all. Isaiah counted at least a dozen families who remained firmly seated, disapproval evident on their faces, but enough. More than enough. Mayor Wilkins looked surprised but pleased as he addressed the crowd. "Well then, it seems we have our new schoolteacher. Miss Reed will begin once the temporary schoolroom is prepared." As they left the church, people approached Eleanor, tentatively at first, then with increasing warmth, to introduce themselves and welcome her to the community. Isaiah hung back, watching with quiet pride as she blossomed under their acceptance, however tentative it might be. Sheriff Harding sidled up beside him, observing the scene with a conflicted expression. "This doesn't change everything, Washington," he said quietly. "There's still talk about your living arrangements." "Miss Reed will be moving into town once suitable accommodations are arranged," Isaiah replied evenly. "But not because of gossip or threats, because it's what's right for her new position." Harding studied him for a long moment. "You really care about her, don't you?" Isaiah met his gaze steadily. "I care about her having the chance to be seen for who she truly is." "And who is that exactly?" Isaiah watched as Eleanor knelt to speak with a small girl who was shyly touching her scarred cheek with innocent curiosity, Eleanor's smile gentle and unashamed. "Someone beautiful," he said simply. Spring came early to Timber Creek that year, as if the land itself was eager to shed the harshness of winter. By late March, the temporary schoolhouse, 2 rooms in the back of the church, was filled with the sounds of children reciting lessons, asking questions, and occasionally laughing at Miss Reed's gentle humor. Eleanor had taken a small room above the general store, proper and respectable for a schoolteacher. Yet each weekend, she made the journey to Crescent Moon Ranch, ostensibly to collect more of her belongings, but always staying for dinner and often reading aloud by the fire afterward, just as they had done through the winter months. Neither spoke of the strange limbo they found themselves in, no longer employer and employee, not quite friends, yet bound by something deeper than either was ready to name. It was on one such evening in early April, with the windows open to the sweet spring air, that Eleanor closed her book and looked directly at Isaiah. "Sheriff Harding came to the school today," she said. Isaiah tensed immediately. What did he want? To apologize, actually. She smiled at his obvious surprise, for his part in the delegation that came here that night. He said seeing me with the children made him reconsider some things. Harding apologized? Isaiah's disbelief was evident. The same man who told me I was getting above my station when I bought this land? Eleanor nodded. People can change, Isaiah. Sometimes they just need to see something that challenges their beliefs. Some people, Isaiah corrected. Not everyone in town is having your same change of heart. It was true. While many had come to accept, even appreciate Eleanor as their teacher, a vocal minority still whispered about the scandal of her previous living arrangement with Isaiah. Some of the wealthier families still refused to send their children to school, while that scarred woman taught there. Speaking of the town, Eleanor said, her tone deliberately casual, Mayor Wilkins mentioned they're hosting a social next weekend to welcome the railroad representatives. She traced the pattern on the book cover with her finger, not meeting Isaiah's eyes. I'm expected to attend, as the schoolteacher. Isaiah understood her unspoken question. And you're wondering if I'll be there. I know such gatherings aren't usually to your taste, she said quickly, and given how some people still feel, I'll escort you, Isaiah said simply. Eleanor's head snapped up, her eye wide with surprise. Isaiah, that's not what I meant. You don't have to. I know I don't have to, he interrupted gently. I want to. He smiled slightly. Besides, I own one of the largest ranches in the area. If the railroad's considering a livestock spur line, they should meet all the potential shippers. There will be talk, Eleanor warned. There's already talk, Isaiah replied with a shrug. Might as well give them something worth talking about. The week passed quickly, with Eleanor growing increasingly nervous about the social as Saturday approached. When Isaiah arrived at her room above the general store to escort her, he was struck by the transformation. She wore a dress of deep blue that complemented her auburn hair, which she'd arranged artfully to partially frame her scarred cheek, without hiding it completely. You look beautiful, Isaiah said quietly. Eleanor blushed, smoothing her skirts. I've been saving this dress for something special. I haven't worn it since before the fire. The significance of that admission wasn't lost on Isaiah. He offered his arm with formal gallantry. Shall we give Timber Creek something to remember, Miss Reed? Her smile was radiant as she placed her hand on his arm. Indeed we shall, Mr. Washington. The town hall had been decorated with bunting and lanterns for the occasion, and a small band played in one corner. Conversations halted momentarily as Isaiah and Eleanor entered together, but resumed quickly with increased intensity. Mayor Wilkins approached immediately, looking both concerned and annoyed. Miss Reed, Mr. Washington, he greeted them with forced cordiality. I wasn't expecting both of you. Wouldn't miss it, Isaiah replied pleasantly. I understand the railroad representatives are here to assess livestock shipping potential. As one of the area's ranchers, I thought my input might be valuable. The mayor couldn't argue with that logic, though his discomfort was evident. Yes, well, they're over by the refreshment table. Mr. Carlson and Mr. Phillips from Central Pacific. Thank you, Isaiah said, guiding Eleanor through the crowd. They were acutely aware of the eyes following them, the whispers, the space that seemed to clear around them as they moved. But Isaiah kept his head high, and Eleanor followed his example, refusing to shrink or hide. The railroad representatives proved to be pragmatic businessmen primarily concerned with potential profits. They listened with interest to Isaiah's assessment of the area's ranching capacity and asked intelligent questions about cattle drives and shipping schedules. "You seem to know your business, Mr. Washington," Carlson observed. "How long have you been ranching in these parts?" 7 years, Isaiah replied. "Built Crescent Moon from nothing." Phillips nodded approvingly. "Impressive. And you, Miss Reed, the mayor tells us you're responsible for the educational advancement in Timber Creek." Eleanor smiled modestly. "I'm simply doing what I was trained to do, Mr. Phillips. The children here deserve the same quality of education as children back east." "Indeed they do," Carlson agreed. "My company finds that towns with strong educational systems tend to grow more rapidly. Educated citizens make better business partners." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Spencer, the banker, with his wife and daughter. "Ah, Mr. Carlson, Mr. Phillips," Spencer said, pointedly ignoring Isaiah and Eleanor. "Allow me to introduce my family. My daughter Sophia is quite accomplished at the piano. Perhaps she might favor us with a performance." The obvious attempt to draw the railroad men away was successful, leaving Isaiah and Eleanor standing alone once more. "Shall we dance?" Isaiah asked quietly. Eleanor's eye widened. "Isaiah, that would be scandalous," he finished with a slight smile. "More scandalous than arriving together. More scandalous than everything they're already whispering about us." Eleanor hesitated, then nodded decisively. "Yes, let's dance." The floor cleared noticeably as they took their positions, but the band, after a momentary pause, continued playing. Isaiah placed his hand respectfully at Eleanor's waist, taking her gloved hand in his other. "You dance well," Eleanor observed as they began to move. "Had to learn," Isaiah replied. "Was part of a cattle sale negotiation in Kansas City once. Buyer insisted on sealing the deal at a social event." They moved together with surprising grace, each hyper-aware of the eyes upon them, but increasingly focused only on each other. For the first time, Eleanor felt herself truly forgetting about her scars, about the whispers, about everything except the man before her. The moment was shattered by Spencer's daughter, Sophia, deliberately bumping into Eleanor as she passed with another dancer. "Oh!" Sophia exclaimed with feigned concern. "I'm so sorry, Miss Reed. I didn't see you there." Her eyes flickered meaningfully to Eleanor's scarred cheek. "But then it must be hard for you to see properly too, with only one good eye." The cruel words hung in the air as the music continued. Eleanor felt herself freezing, the old shame rushing back. But before she could react, Isaiah spoke, his voice carrying just far enough for those nearby to hear. "Miss Spencer," he said calmly, "I've observed that those who focus on the physical flaws of others often do so to distract from their own moral deficiencies." He smiled politely. "Enjoy your evening." With that, he guided Eleanor smoothly away, leaving Sophia Spencer flushed with humiliation. "Thank you," Eleanor whispered, her composure returning. "For stating the obvious," Isaiah replied. "That girl has been coddled and spoiled her whole life. You, on the other hand, walked through fire to save children and came out stronger for it. There's no comparison in my mind." As the evening progressed, an unexpected shift began to occur. Mrs. Peterson approached to discuss her son's improved reading. Reverend Foster's wife engaged Eleanor in conversation about organizing a small library for the town. Even Sheriff Harding nodded respectfully to Isaiah as they passed each other. Not everyone, certainly. Spencer and his circle remained coldly aloof, and several families had departed early in apparent protest. But the feared universal rejection never materialized. Near the end of the evening, as Eleanor excused herself to speak with one of her students' mothers, Mayor Wilkins approached Isaiah. "Bold move, Washington," he said, watching the dancers. "Coming here together like this." Isaiah sipped his punch. "Just attending a town function, Mayor. Nothing bold about it." Wilkins snorted. "You know exactly what you're doing, making a statement. And what statement would that be? That you don't care what people think, that the rules don't apply to you." Isaiah turned to face him fully. "The rules have never applied equally to me, Mayor. I've been judged by different standards my entire life. So has Miss Reed, since her accident." "It's not the same thing," Wilkins protested. "Isn't it?" Isaiah challenged quietly. "Judging someone's worth by something they can't control? Deciding who deserves respect and who doesn't based on appearances? He shook his head. Seems exactly the same to me. The mayor was silent for a long moment. The railroad men were impressed with you, he finally said. Said you know more about the cattle business than any 3 ranchers they've met elsewhere. I've had to work twice as hard to get half as far, Isaiah replied simply. Tends to make a man thorough in his knowledge. Wilkins nodded slowly. They're recommending the spur line. Construction likely to begin by fall. He looked directly at Isaiah. Town's going to change, grow, can't afford to lose good people, regardless of circumstances. It was as close to an acceptance as Isaiah was likely to get from the mayor. He nodded in acknowledgement. Glad to hear it. Timber Creek has potential. As the social wound down, Isaiah found Eleanor waiting by the door, her expression thoughtful. Ready to go? He asked. She nodded, taking his arm once more as they stepped out into the clear spring night. They walked in comfortable silence toward the general store, the town quiet around them. When they reached the stairs leading to her room, Eleanor paused. I haven't thanked you, she said softly, for everything. Nothing to thank me for, Isaiah replied. You did the hard part yourself. No, she shook her head. When I came to your door that night, I'd almost given up. Not just on finding work, but on being seen, really seen. Her voice caught slightly. You were the first person in years who looked at me without flinching, who saw beyond. She gestured to her scarred face, and Isaiah gently caught her hand. Beauty ain't skin, Eleanor, he said softly, echoing his words from the night they met. Never was, never will be. In the silver moonlight, with the sounds of the social still faintly audible in the distance, Eleanor made a decision. She rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips gently to Isaiah's, a brief, tender kiss that conveyed everything words could not. When she pulled back, her eye searched his face questioningly. Isaiah touched her scarred cheek with infinite gentleness. I've been wanting to do that for months, he admitted quietly. Eleanor smiled, her entire face illuminated with a joy that transformed her. The town will talk, she warned, though her tone held no real concern. Let them, Isaiah replied. Maybe they'll learn something about what beauty truly means. As they stood together in the moonlight, the promise of a future neither had dared to imagine suddenly seemed possible, a future where they could be seen for who they truly were, beyond the limitations others tried to place upon them. It wouldn't be easy. There would still be those who couldn't see past appearances, who clung to prejudice and fear. But for the first time, both Isaiah and Eleanor knew with certainty that they were strong enough to face whatever came, together. And in that knowledge, they had found something far more precious than mere acceptance. They had found love based not on what eyes could see, but on what hearts could recognize in one another. If this story touched your heart, remember that there are thousands more like it. Real stories of black cowboys, ranchers, and pioneers whose courage and dignity helped build the American West, despite facing prejudice at every turn. Stories of human connection that transcended the limitations of their time. Hit that subscribe button right now and join the Black Rancher family. Your subscription helps us continue to uncover these hidden histories and share them with the world. Thank you for spending this time with us today. If you found value in this story, please share it with someone who might need to be reminded that true beauty goes far deeper than appearances. Until our trails cross again, this is The Black Rancher, keeping our forgotten history alive one story at a time.